We all know the stories of the Titanic and Pompeii. We tell their tales, we learn their lessons, and we remember their victims. But what about the flood that may have claimed 4 million lives? Or the cyclone that sparked a civil war and literally created a new nation? These are the stories of our planet's deadliest events, the ones that somehow history forgot. They are tales of devastation so staggering they completely reshaped our world, yet most of us have never even heard their names. Today, we're uncovering the haunting truths of the catastrophes that slipped through the cracks of our collective memory. Our first story takes us to China in 1931. The nation was already in turmoil, caught between political strife and the early days of a civil war. But a threat far greater than any army was quietly gathering. After 2 long years of drought, the weather turned violent. The winter of 1930 brought unusually heavy snow to the mountains. When spring arrived, all that melted snow surged into the river systems, right as torrential, non-stop rains began to fall. China's great Yangtze River, the lifeblood of the nation, began to swell. Through July and August, the downpour was relentless. The river, along with the Yellow and Huai rivers, rose to levels nobody had ever seen. For centuries, the people of the Yangtze Valley had trusted a system of dikes to hold back the annual floods. But this wasn't an ordinary year. The water just kept coming. In August, the breaking point finally came. Overwhelmed by the sheer volume of water, the dikes began to collapse. On the night of August 25th, the levees around Gayo Lake gave way, unleashing a liquid avalanche on the sleeping city of Gayo. In just one night, somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000 people were gone. But this was just one part of a flood of almost unimaginable scale. The waters consumed an area the size of England and half of Scotland. An estimated 52 million people were affected. The disaster that followed wasn't just about drowning, it was a crisis with many layers. The initial death toll from the floodwaters is thought to be around 150,000 people. But as the water stuck around for months, a far deadlier aftermath began. The floods wiped out all the farmland and crops, which led to a massive famine. Tens of millions of displaced survivors were crowded into makeshift camps with no sanitation. It was a perfect breeding ground for disease. Outbreaks of cholera, dysentery, and typhoid swept through the desperate population, with a cholera epidemic the following year claiming another 32,000 lives. When all was said and done, the total number of lives lost is difficult to truly comprehend. While official reports at the time were lower, Western sources and later studies estimate the final death toll was somewhere between 2 and 4 million people. It was a catastrophe on a scale that defies the imagination. Yet today, it's barely a footnote in world history. Natural forces don't just take lives. Sometimes they rewrite history. In 1970, a single storm did exactly that. It slammed into a nation already fractured by political tension, pushed it into a war, and ended with the birth of a new country. This is the story of the Pola cyclone. In November 1970, Pakistan was a country divided, not just by culture and language, but by over 1,000 miles of Indian land. West Pakistan held all the political and military power, while East Pakistan, the densely populated delta region we now know as Bangladesh, often felt ignored and marginalized. The people there lived in one of the most disaster-prone places on Earth, a low-lying web of islands at the mercy of the Bay of Bengal. On November 8th, a cyclone started forming over the bay, and it grew stronger as it moved north. Meteorologists knew a big storm was coming, but back in 1970, the systems for warning the hundreds of thousands of people in remote coastal villages were tragically inadequate. On the night of November 12th, the Bola cyclone made landfall. It was a monster, a Category 4 hurricane with winds hitting 150 miles per hour. But the wind wasn't the deadliest part.
the cyclone brought with it a storm surge, a massive wall of water, reported to be nearly 20 feet high in some areas. It swept over the low-lying islands, simply erasing entire villages from existence. In one district, Tazumuddin, over 45% of the entire population was killed. Many were asleep when the water crashed through their homes. The devastation was absolute. While the exact number is uncertain, it's estimated that between 300,000 and 500,000 people lost their lives, making it the deadliest tropical cyclone ever recorded. The fishing industry, the lifeblood of the region, was completely annihilated. In the aftermath, the world expected a massive relief effort from the Pakistani government in the West. It never happened. The response was slow, insufficient, and seen by the Bengali people of East Pakistan as a sign of cruel indifference. Local leaders accused the central government of gross neglect. While international aid did eventually arrive, the feeling of being abandoned by their own government had set in. That outrage was the final straw. Less than a month later, Pakistan held its first ever general election. In East Pakistan, the Awami League Party, which championed Bengali autonomy, won a landslide victory, a clear political message fueled by the anger over the cyclone response. When the ruling military in West Pakistan refused to hand over power, it triggered the Bangladesh Liberation War. After a brutal conflict and with help from India, East Pakistan seceded. In 1971, it became the independent nation of Bangladesh. The Bola cyclone didn't just cause destruction, it exposed an injustice that ignited a revolution and redrew the map of South Asia. Sometimes, the deadliest monsters are the ones we make ourselves. On December 3, 1984, in the heart of India, a man-made disaster of unprecedented horror unfolded. It didn't come with a bang, but with a silent, creeping cloud of poison. It's known as the Bhopal gas tragedy, the world's worst industrial disaster. In the city of Bhopal, a pesticide plant owned by Union Carbide sat right next to densely packed neighborhoods. In the years leading up to the disaster, the plant had been hit with a series of cost-cutting measures. Key safety systems were broken or had been switched off. The staff was cut down. Warnings from both employees and journalists about the dangerous conditions were ignored, again and again. Deep inside the factory sat large tanks holding about 45 tons of a highly toxic gas called methyl isocyanate, or MIC. Late on the night of December 2nd, a catastrophic failure began. A large amount of water got into one of the MIC tanks, setting off a runaway chemical reaction. The temperature and pressure inside the tank skyrocketed. The safety systems that should have contained it failed. Just after midnight, a massive cloud of deadly gas escaped the plant and began to drift silently over the sleeping city. It was heavier than air, so it hugged the ground, seeping into the thousands of homes and shacks surrounding the factory. People woke up choking, their eyes on fire, their lungs filling with fluid. Panic erupted as tens of thousands tried to run, but in the dark and confusion, many ran straight into the invisible poison. The immediate effects were horrifying. It's estimated that between 8,000 and 10,000 people died within the first 3 days. The official immediate death toll was over 2,200, but the true number is thought to be much, much higher. But the tragedy didn't end when the gas cleared. The aftermath has been a slow-motion disaster stretching on for decades. Over 500,000 survivors were left with permanent injuries. The gas caused chronic lung problems, blindness, and damage to the nervous, immune, and reproductive systems. For 40 years, the people of Bhopal have suffered, with new generations showing high rates of birth defects and developmental disabilities. The total number of lives lost, when you account for the long-term health effects, is now estimated to be over 22,000. It was a catastrophe on a scale that defies the imagination. Yet today, it's barely a footnote in world history. A flood that swallowed a nation, a storm that birthed a country, and a gas leak that continues to kill 4 decades later. These are more than just tragic stories. They're powerful, haunting reminders of how vulnerable we are to the power of nature and to the consequences of our own actions. They show how a single event can change a society forever, and how easily even the most profound legacies can be forgotten. By remembering them, we honor the millions of lives lost, and we arm ourselves with the lessons we need to prevent such horrors from happening again. Which of these forgotten stories surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe these stories need to be remembered, please share this video and subscribe for more explorations into our forgotten history. Thanks for watching.